Hello, this is David, and in this video we're going to talk about the concept of probability and chance. We're going to think of the related term random variance as it applies to real property, and we're going to actually do some research to see how well or how bad or how well or how bad that randomness affects the extraction technique that we call match paired sales. Now you can see the screen, and we'll get over here back to Bart in a minute. You can see Bart hanging on to the light post here. We'll get back to him in a minute. Now what I have is a house that's worth $100,000. You could call it its intrinsic price, $100,000. Now, if it sells, we would expect it to sell for $100,000. And if the market is stable, we would expect if it sells a year later in June of 2016, it would sell for $100,000. So then we would know the change in value, which looks between these two numbers, between the 2015 sale and the 2016 sale. We would expect, if it's a perfect market, and if it's a perfect market, and if the value started at 100,000, then the change in value that we would see in these would be 100,000. Would be nothing. Would be 0% change, because it's a stable market. Now, this is what you see when you go to most seminars, and I'm not knocking anybody because some of my seminars that I've written, it's the same way. When you talk about match paired sales in a perfect market, or you run regression analysis in a perfect market, and a perfect market means when it sells, the market's perfect, it sells for exactly what it's worth, everything works out fine. Now what happens in real life is we get to real estate markets, we realize that sales prices vary in markets. For example, if you appraise a house for $100,000, you're not surprised if it sells for $95,000 or $105,000. So in that case, we'd have a range of value between -5 and a +5. Now, when I say a range, that means that this number is going to look at this, and this number is actually going to start with 100,000, and it's going to add or minus some number at random, and it uses the function rand between here, somewhere between these two, a -5 to a 5. So it could be, but it's going to be as a whole percentage. So it could be a -5, -4, -3, -2, -1. Could be a 0, and then it could go all the way up from 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and it adds it in. So we know by chance, if you have a $100,000 house and it can sell ±5%, you can watch this, and when I hit the button, it will change. See, it stayed above. Remember, it can't go below 95, can't go above 105. You can see it change. See that change? Just by chance. So why did it pick 101? It used a rand between function and just said between these two percentages, just pick one at random. So it's just random, and that's the way that it is in real property markets. Now, if you're a researcher and you're trying to understand extraction techniques and valuing property from sales and from other information, and to predict a value or to extract an adjustment rate, you have to deal with this plus or minus. It's always there. Now, 5 is just a number I threw in, and that would be a pretty good market. Some it might be as much as, from a -10 to a +10%. But at any rate, you see where I got this number from. It's this number, and for whatever reason, in the book, we give a list of reasons that these might occur. It's going to sell just a chance at one of these numbers. Now, the market's stable, but this second sale is actually going to do the same thing. It's going to be 100,000, and it's going to vary just like this one did, ±5%. So now let's focus on this number. So we know it can't be below 95, and it can't be more than 105. So I can click around, and just by chance, it added 5,000. Just by chance, this was a -4. Now, if we want to look for the change in value the way, say this was a sale and a resale now that we found in the market, we would say, well, it sold a year ago for 96, so there's 9,000 difference. And then there's the formula up here. It's U minus U divide by B10. So it's this number minus this number, which is 9,000, divide by this. So it'd be a little more than 9%. So there's your 9.4. Now, but the odd thing that we know is this is a stable market. If there was no market variance, if the market variance was 0, it would be 100. When it sold, it would be 100 here, and it would be 0%. But we know that doesn't happen. So if you believe a market, and I can promise you it does, can vary easily between maybe -10 to a +10. In this case, we'll use -5 to a +5. And normally in Excel for these rand betweens, you can use the F9 button, but sometimes it stops my recorders, and I hit F9 and it stops. So I'm not going to hit the F9. That button just tells the Excel sheet to calculate. So what we're saying here now as a researcher, what we're looking at this happening, and we're watching that this paired sales just by chance might show 3%, that the market's going up 3%, which would be wrong because the market's really 0%. This time that's pretty close. Just by chance it did really well. It says 1% and it's supposed to be 0. And there's a -1, that's good. So sometimes it's good. 2's not quite correct, but then there's 3. 3% appreciation would be wrong. Now let's go to a bigger number. Let's go to a -8 and a +8. Now that means that the market ranges from a -8 to a +8 randomly. And what usually changes random is the sales price. It's the sales price. We call the random variance. See, this is the random variance, 105. That $5,000 is the random variance. And this is 8. That's the random variance because we know it should have been 100. Now let's take a look. If we, on the next click, let's say we had a real paired sales. We click and it shows the market's going down almost 4%. Well, we know that's not right. We know by the definition, by the way we set this market up, if you don't have any random variance, there'll be 100,000. Okay, I think I've just about been beating the horse to death, so let's just look at a couple more. -2, that's not terrible. Now -6 is bad. One sale, -6. So what does this tell us about match paired analysis? Well, it tells us that match paired analysis has some real problems dealing with randomness in the marketplace. Randomness in the marketplace. Now, you could click this and just get an idea. So that's showing like see, that's terrible. That's showing like a 9% appreciation rate. That would lead you totally in the wrong direction if you did this. Now, let's go look at a swimming pool. We kind of set the same thing up, only the value of the house is 200. And if it sells without a pool, it should be 200. But if it sells with a pool, it's 220 because we've set up here a pool's worth 20,000. Okay, so we can see that if there's no random variance, it gives us the right answer. I click and it says 20. Now let's add the 8%. So in this market, it's no longer a perfect market. It's more like a real market. Sales prices just randomly vary between a -8 and an 8%. Anywhere in that range, not just a -8 or a +8, anywhere in that range. Okay, now I'll click. And this gave the answer that the pool's worth 30. And the pool's worth 20, so that's, you know, doesn't sound bad. It kind of gives you an idea, but that's 50% off, really, because 20,000, another 10, that's 50% off. 34, it's wrong again. Now this time it's 16, that's pretty close to 20. I'd call that a success. So out of 5 or 6, we had a success. That's not a success. Now it says the pool's worth -4,000. And that might be real, but in our model that we set up, a pool's worth 20. So here we are now with another match paired sales, and due to the plus or minus of randomness in the sales price for no reason, down here in these, no reason, we don't know why, it gives us the wrong answer. Now, we've done research here, so we know now, any of you that have watched this knows that you need to be really careful using one pair of match paired analysis to come to any conclusion. Now let's come back and let's talk about Bart a minute. Now Bart, you can see he's been to a party and looks like he's a little looped. Looks like it's about 1930 to me, maybe 1920s. And he's come out of his party and he's so drunk he grabbed that lamppost to hold on so he wouldn't fall. Now, sometimes appraisers do this. Sometimes we have to be careful that we're not like Bart. And that is that someone says, you have a preconceived idea that the market should be going up 3%, or let's just hit something. You believe the market's going down, so you take this one random match paired sales, you just take this one, and it's wrong because randomness to support what you're thinking. In other words, this is really not significant to rely on, but you can say it does support your idea, maybe that the market's going down 5%. In that case, you would be doing what this drunk's doing. You would be using the lamppost more for support than illumination. So it's important to understand that due to randomness and chance and probability, that there's always going to be randomness in numbers in real property data. And we've got to find out ways to get around it. All right, that's the end of this video. Thank you very much.